Everyone tells you not to buy a BMW E36. Rising maintenance costs, aging electronics, parts that seem to fail right after the warranty runs out. But here's what nobody mentions. Bought right, this car can still make sense in 2026. Today we're breaking down the real numbers. What it costs to buy, what it costs to keep, what actually breaks, and whether buying one today is a smart move or a very expensive mistake. Because here's the problem. An E36 can look cheap. You see one online for $3,000 and think, perfect, cheap BMW. Then 2 months later, you're replacing the cooling system, suspension bushings, leaking seals, and suddenly your cheap BMW isn't looking very cheap anymore. But buy the right one, and the story changes completely. The E36 was BMW's 3 Series from 1990 to 2000, the generation that helped build BMW's reputation for balanced, driver-focused engineering. And honestly, that's exactly why people still want one 30 years later. It's cheap, it's rear-wheel drive, it looks better every year, and compared with a modern BMW, you can actually understand what's happening under the hood without needing 3 laptops and a software subscription. That's the appeal. You get the classic BMW formula: engine in the front, power going to the rear wheels, a relatively lightweight chassis, and a driving experience that feels mechanical. You don't drive an E36 like you drive a modern luxury car. You feel it. The steering, the chassis, the road. And when everything is working properly, there's a reason this generation became so popular with enthusiasts, drifters, track day drivers, and project car builders. But that "when everything is working properly" part is very important. Because these cars are now old, really old. The newest E36 is more than 25 years old. Some are over 30. So you're not just buying a BMW, you're buying the history of every owner before you. And that can either be very good or absolutely terrible. So let's talk about what actually breaks. First problem? The cooling system. This is probably the first thing I would ask about before buying an E36. Radiator, water pump, thermostat, expansion tank, hoses, all these components matter. And if the seller tells you, "Don't worry bro, the cooling system is good," but has absolutely no receipts, that doesn't mean the cooling system is good, it means you have no idea. And with a car this old, that's a big difference. The problem isn't necessarily that every E36 will suddenly overheat tomorrow. The problem is age. Plastic ages, rubber ages, hoses age, and a cooling component that was perfectly fine 5 years ago might not be perfectly fine today. And overheating is something you really don't want to gamble with, because one small cooling system failure can become a much bigger engine problem if you ignore it. So here's my rule. If the cooling system has documented maintenance, that's a good sign. If it was recently refreshed with quality parts, even better. If nobody knows when anything was replaced, put some money aside before you even buy the car. But here's where things get more serious than a leaking radiator. Rust. You can replace a water pump, you can replace a thermostat, you can replace a window regulator. You can't cheaply replace half the car. So before buying an E36, look underneath it. Not just at the paint, not just at the interior, underneath. Check the jacking points, check the rocker areas, check the wheel arches, check underneath the rear of the car, and if possible, put it on a lift. Because a clean E36 in photos can hide a very different story underneath. Fresh paint is cheap compared with proper rust repair, and some sellers know exactly how to make a car look better in photos than it actually is. So don't fall in love before you've inspected the boring parts. The boring parts are the parts that can save you thousands. Then we have the suspension and rear end components. And this is where age starts showing again. Bushings wear out, rubber mounts wear out, suspension components develop play. Sometimes you drive an old E36 and think, why does everyone say this car handles so well? Then you drive one with a properly refreshed suspension, and suddenly you understand. Because a worn E36 and a sorted E36 can feel like 2 completely different cars. You might hear clunks, feel vibrations, feel the rear moving around more than it should. And on neglected cars, rear mounting and structural areas deserve a proper inspection too. This isn't something to ignore because the car still drives fine. A lot of old cars still drive fine, until they don't. Next problem, electrical gremlins. And this is where I have a simple rule. When you're inspecting an E36, press every button. I'm serious, every single one. Windows? Test them. Mirrors? Test them. Central locking? Test it. Air conditioning? Turn it on. Lights? Check all of them. Sunroof? Open it, then close it, then open it again. You might feel stupid pressing every button in a 30-year-old BMW. You will feel even more stupid after buying it and discovering 6 things don't work. Window regulators are a common annoyance. Sensors can fail. Old electrical connections can create random problems. Usually, these aren't the kind of repairs that destroy your bank account individually. But that's the trick. One small problem is fine. 5 small problems are annoying. 10 small problems? Congratulations, you bought a project car. Now let's talk about the engine. And here's some good news. A well-maintained E36 can be mechanically durable. But notice the important words there. Well-maintained. Don't just ask whether the engine starts. Every bad car starts. At least when the seller wants to sell it. Check it cold, then drive it. Let it get fully warm. Watch the temperature. Listen for strange noises. Check for smoke. Look underneath for leaks. Feel how the engine pulls. Does it hesitate? Does it misfire? Does the gearbox shift properly? Does the clutch feel healthy? And don't inspect the car for 5 minutes and think you've tested it. 5 minutes tells you almost nothing. You want to experience the car cold. You want to experience it warm. You want to drive slowly. You want to drive at speed. Because some problems don't appear until the car has been running for a while. And now, let's get to the money. Because this is where people usually make their biggest mistake. They only calculate the purchase price. Let's say you find a clean-looking E36 for $3,000. Your budget is exactly $3,000. Sounds perfect, right? Wrong. Because after buying it, your budget is zero. No money for maintenance, no money for tires, no money for fluids, no money for unexpected repairs, no money for a cooling system refresh. Nothing. And with an old BMW, you should never put yourself in that position. The smarter way to think about it is this. First, purchase price. Second, initial refresh. Third, emergency fund. Depending on the condition and market, a clean E36 can sell for roughly $2,000 to $5,000, with more desirable versions costing significantly more. Then you need to ask what hasn't been done. A proper initial refresh can easily require another $1,000 to $2,000. Cooling system, fluids, filters, bushings, small leaks, brakes, suspension components. It depends entirely on the condition of the car. And once you've sorted it, a well-maintained example can be much easier to live with. But you're still driving an old car, so you should expect maintenance. The difference is whether you're fixing everything because the previous owner neglected it, or maintaining a car that's already in good condition. Those are two completely different ownership experiences. And here's one reason the E36 still makes sense. Parts. Compared with many newer BMWs, the E36 can be relatively affordable to repair. And because there are so many of them, there's a huge amount of knowledge available. You can find diagrams, part numbers, forums, videos, repair guides. Someone has probably already had the exact problem you're having, usually at 2 o'clock in the morning, in a forum post from 2008. But they probably had it. And if you're willing to do some basic work yourself, the E36 becomes even more interesting. You don't need to be a professional mechanic, but if you can learn to inspect things, change basic components, research parts, and understand how the car works, you can save a serious amount of money. This is one of the biggest differences between owning an E36 and owning a much newer luxury car. With a modern BMW, one warning light can send you into a world of software, modules, sensors, and expensive diagnostics. With the E36, sometimes the problem is still just a broken piece, and that's refreshing. What about fuel? Don't expect modern car efficiency, especially with the 6-cylinder models. Depending on the engine, transmission, driving style, and condition, fuel consumption can vary significantly. So if your only goal is saving money at the fuel station, there are definitely smarter cars. But nobody buys an E36 because it's the most economical transportation available. You buy one because of the experience, and that's the point. Insurance can also be reasonable depending on where you live, your age, driving history, and the exact version of the car. But don't assume every E36 is cheap to insure. An ordinary older 318i is a completely different situation from a valuable or heavily modified performance model. So check the real insurance price before buying, not after. That's another mistake that's surprisingly easy to avoid. Now here's something interesting. Resale. The E36 is no longer just an old BMW. Clean examples are increasingly being treated as modern classics. And the really important word again is clean. Not every E36 is going up in value. A rusty, badly modified, neglected car isn't suddenly an investment because it's 30 years old. Old doesn't automatically mean collectible, but a good example? A clean chassis, good maintenance history, Original or tasteful specification, desirable engine, manual transmission depending on the market. Those cars can attract much more attention. So if you buy intelligently and maintain it properly, you're not necessarily throwing money into a car that's guaranteed to become worthless. And that's something you can't say about every cheap used car. So after all that, should you buy an E36 in 2026? If you want a car you can completely ignore for 5 years, no, absolutely not. Buy something newer, change the oil, drive away, sleep peacefully. But if you're mechanically interested, if you enjoy cars, if you don't mind learning, if you're willing to inspect before buying, and most importantly, if you keep money aside for maintenance, then yes, the E36 can still make a lot of sense. Because for the money, there aren't many cars that give you the same combination. Classic BMW design, rear-wheel drive, a huge enthusiast community, relatively accessible parts, and a driving experience that still feels special. But the car you buy matters more than the badge on the trunk. I would rather buy a well-maintained, boring spec E36 with receipts than a beautiful-looking modified E36 with no history and 20 hidden problems. Buy condition, not hype. Buy maintenance history, not cheap price. And inspect the car before you become emotionally attached to it. Because when you finally find a good E36, you get it. You understand why people kept them, why people restore them, why people drift them, why people race them, and why, after 30 years, enthusiasts still look at this car and think, yeah, I kind of want one. It's not perfect, it's not maintenance-free, and it won't be the right car for everyone. But if you know exactly what you're buying, that old BMW might not be a bad decision after all. It might actually be one of the best ways to experience what made BMW special in the first place. So, would you buy an E36 in 2026? Let me know in the comments, and if you found this useful, subscribe to Clean Shift Auto. We're breaking down real ownership costs, real problems, and the truth behind the cars everyone wants to buy. Next up, why people can't stand Audi drivers, and whether the stereotype is actually true. See you in the next one.